She was covered in blood that wasn't hers, walking barefoot on the shoulder of a highway at 2 in the morning, carrying a dying dog that weighed almost as much as she did. Her arms had gone numb 2 miles ago. Her left foot was sliced open from stepping on broken glass. The dog's breathing was getting slower. Each exhale came out wet and rattling, like something inside him was filling with fluid. His massive head rested against her collarbone, and every few steps, he let out a whimper so quiet it sounded like a child crying in another room. She'd already walked 4 miles like this. She had 2 more to go. And the only reason she kept putting one foot in front of the other was because 3 miles back, this dog had looked up at her from a ditch full of blood and muddy water. And she'd made him a promise. What she didn't know was that this dog belonged to the most dangerous man in the state. A man who, at that very moment, had 40 armed men tearing the city apart looking for him. And what she really didn't know, what nobody could have predicted, was that in less than 12 hours, that same man would be standing on her doorstep, watching a landlord try to throw her onto the street. What he did next shook the entire neighborhood. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like on this video, and comment where you're watching from. I promise you, this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Let's get into it. Dominic Valenti was not the kind of man who loved things. Love in his experience was a vulnerability, a crack in the wall that enemies could push their fingers into and pry apart. He learned that at 14 years old, standing in the rain outside a federal courthouse, watching U.S. Marshals lead his father away in handcuffs and leg chains. 35 years for racketeering and conspiracy. His mother had collapsed on the courthouse steps. Dominic had to pick her up. Nobody helped them. Not the lawyers, not the neighbors, not the so-called friends who'd eaten at their table every Sunday. They all disappeared the moment the Valenti name became a liability. That was the day Dominic stopped believing in people. Now at 47, he'd built an empire on that disbelief. The Valenti family controlled construction permits, waterfront property, 3 restaurants, and a network of businesses that moved money the way rivers move water, quietly, constantly, and in amounts that would make federal agents lose sleep. Politicians returned his calls within the hour. Police chiefs sent him Christmas cards. Judges he'd never met ruled in his favor on cases he'd never filed. Dominic was calm, methodical, precise. He spoke softly because he never needed to shout. He moved slowly because no one dared rush him. And when someone betrayed him, they didn't get a second chance. They got a visit from men whose names no one remembered afterward. His men feared him. His enemies respected him. His associates admired him. But nobody knew him. Not really. Not the version of Dominic that existed behind closed doors after the meetings ended and the compound went quiet. That version of Dominic, the one who couldn't sleep most nights, who ate dinner alone at a table set for one, who sometimes stood at the window of his study watching the rain and thinking about his mother, that man was invisible to the world, except to Caesar. Caesar was a 6-year-old Rottweiler with a chest like an oil drum and paws the size of a man's fist. Dominic's mother, Angela, had picked him from a litter at a farm upstate, the last gift she ever gave her son. She was already sick by then. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor said weeks. She lasted 3 months, stubborn as always. The day she brought the puppy home, she placed him in Dominic's arms and said something he never forgot. "This dog won't judge you. He won't betray you. He won't care about your money or your name. He'll love you because you're you. And Dominic, you need at least one thing in your life that loves you like that." She died 11 days later. So Caesar never left Dominic's side after that. He slept at the foot of his bed. He rode shotgun in the armored SUV. He sat under the desk during meetings while men discussed things that carried prison sentences. When Dominic had nightmares, and he had them often, Caesar would press his warm body against Dominic's side until the shaking stopped. The men in Dominic's organization understood the hierarchy clearly. You could insult them. You could shortchange them. You could show up late to a meeting and maybe talk your way out of it. But Caesar was untouchable. The dog was the last living connection to Angela Valenti, and anyone who threatened that connection was threatening the only thing Dominic had left of his mother. That's what made the phone call that Tuesday night feel like the end of the world. It was supposed to be a routine transfer. Paulie and Gio, two of Dominic's most trusted guys, were driving Caesar from the compound to Dominic's downtown apartment, a 20-minute drive they'd done 100 times. Caesar sat in the back seat with his head out the window, tongue flapping in the wind, completely unbothered by the world. That was the thing about Caesar. In a world full of tension and violence and calculated silence, he was pure, uncomplicated joy. Then a delivery truck blew through a red light on 9th Avenue doing 50. The impact was catastrophic. The SUV spun twice across the intersection, sparks sprang from the undercarriage, and slammed sideways into a concrete median. The rear passenger door crumpled inward like a crushed can. Glass exploded across the cabin. Paulie's airbag fired into his face. Gio's head hit the dashboard and he went limp. When Paulie came to, 10 seconds, maybe 15, the first thing he did was turn around. The back seat was destroyed. The door had buckled so far inward it had crushed the armrest where Caesar had been sitting. The leather was slick with blood. The window was gone. Caesar was gone. Paulie's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. He called Dominic, and the words came out broken. "Boss, there was an accident. A truck hit us. Caesar, he's not in the car. The door's open. There's blood. He's gone. I can't find him." Silence. Not the brief pause of a man processing information. The long, hollow silence of a man whose world has just tilted on its axis. When Dominic finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. But it was the most terrifying whisper Paulie had ever heard. "Every man, every car, every camera, every contact, every street in that zip code. You find my dog, Paulie. You bring him to me alive. And if you don't call this number again." The line went dead. Within 20 minutes, 40 men were on the streets. SUVs fanned out in every direction. Dominic stood in his study, both hands flat on the desk, staring at a framed photograph of his mother holding an 8-week-old puppy with a red bow on his collar. And for the first time in 33 years, Dominic Valenti prayed. 6 miles from the crash site, on a dark 2-lane road that hugged the edge of an industrial park, a woman named Clara Booker was walking home. Clara was 31. She worked 2 jobs, night janitor at a packaging warehouse from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and an afternoon house cleaner for a service that paid $9 an hour and docked you 15 minutes pay if you clocked in 1 minute late. Between the 2 jobs, she slept roughly 90 minutes a day, sometimes less. She didn't own a car. She'd never owned a car. She walked 3 miles to work and 3 miles home, rain or shine, summer or winter. Her shoes were held together with super glue. Her winter coat came from a church donation bin. She ate 1 real meal a day and stretched it as far as it would go. But Clara Booker did not feel sorry for herself. That was a luxury she couldn't afford. What she did feel, walking home that particular night, was dread. Because taped to her apartment door, a 1-bedroom above a nail salon on Greenfield Road, was an eviction notice that she'd been staring at for 3 weeks like it might disappear if she wished hard enough. 4 months behind on rent, $3,200. Her landlord, Gerald Meeks, had called her 6 times in the last week alone. The last call had been different from the others. Meeks wasn't frustrated anymore. He was enjoying it. Thursday morning, Clara. The sheriff will be there at 9. I suggest you start packing because I'm listing that unit the same afternoon. Maybe a tenant who actually pays rent will appreciate it. Thursday was tomorrow, and Clara had $47 in her bank account. She'd tried everything. Extra shifts, selling her grandmother's ring, the only piece of jewelry she owned, calling the housing assistance office, where she'd been put on a waiting list that was 8 months long, asking her boss at the cleaning company for an advance, only to be told that advances weren't available for employees who'd been there less than a year. She had no family. Her mother died when she was 12. Her father left before that. Her grandmother, the woman who raised her in rural Georgia, who taught her to cook and to pray and to never walk past a creature in pain, passed away 3 years ago. The bus ticket to this city had been Clara's last attempt at starting over. It wasn't working. That's the state Clara was in. Exhausted, broke, dreading tomorrow, when she heard the sound that changed everything. A whimper, low and guttural, coming from the drainage ditch beside the road. Clara stopped. Her body told her to keep walking. Her feet were aching. Her shift had been brutal. Her bed, the mattress she might be sleeping on for the last time, was only a mile away. But she heard it again. Louder. Wetter. The sound of something alive that was trying very hard not to die. She pulled out her phone and aimed the flashlight into the ditch, and her breath caught. The biggest dog she had ever seen was lying on its side at the bottom of that ditch, half submerged in filthy rainwater. A Rottweiler, massive, muscular, built like a small tank. A gash ran diagonally across its rib cage, so long and deep that the flesh had peeled apart, and the white gleam of bone showed through. Blood had turned the standing water dark red. One of its back legs was swollen and bent at a wrong angle. Its breathing came in fast, shallow bursts, each one weaker than the last. The dog's eyes were open, dark, glassy, fading. But when Clara's flashlight hit them, something flickered. Not aggression, not surrender, recognition. Like the dog knew somehow that this stranger was its last chance. Most people would have called animal control and kept walking. Some might have called the police. A few might have felt guilty for a day or two before forgetting entirely. Clara slid down the embankment without hesitation. Her shoes sank into the mud. The dog flinched when she got close and let out a low growl. Not threatening, but warning. A wounded animal's instinct. Clara knew the difference. Her grandmother had taken in every stray and injured creature in the county. Feral cats with broken legs, a blind possum that lived on their porch for 2 years, nighthawk with a torn wing that Grandma Ruth nursed back to health in a cardboard box in the kitchen. Animals know, Grandma Ruth used to say. They know who's safe. You just got to give them a minute to figure it out. Clara crouched low, made herself small, extended one hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. "Easy, baby," she whispered. "I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But I'm not going to leave you here. I promise." The dog sniffed her hand. His nose was dry and hot. A bad sign. Then his growl faded, his muscles unclenched, and his enormous head dropped back into the water with a splash. He'd decided to trust her. Clara moved quickly. She stripped off her work shirt. She had a tank top underneath, and pressed it against the wound, tying the sleeves around his barrel chest as tight as she could without making him yelp. And the bleeding slowed but didn't stop. This dog needed a vet, soon. She checked his collar, heavy leather with polished steel studs. No tags, but the collar alone probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. This wasn't a stray. This was someone's dog, someone wealthy. She pulled out her phone to call for help. No signal. Dead zone. The industrial park was a cellular black hole. The nearest emergency vet she knew was on Birchwood Avenue. She'd passed it on the bus once and remembered the blue neon sign. 6 miles away. Clara looked down the empty road. No headlights, no houses, no payphones, nothing but asphalt and darkness stretching in both directions. She looked back at the dog. He was watching her, those dark eyes glassy and fading, locked on her face like she was the only thing left in the world. You don't walk past something that's hurt. That's what Grandma Ruth always said. You don't walk past it. Clara squatted down, got her arms under the Rottweiler's body, braced her legs and lifted. The weight nearly drove her to her knees. Her spine compressed. Her arms screamed. This dog was 110 pounds of dense muscle and bone, slick with blood and water, and Clara weighed barely 120 herself. But she got him up. Cradled against her chest, his massive head resting on her shoulder, his blood soaking warm through her tank top, and she started walking. Mile 1 was adrenaline, pure survival instinct for both of them. Clara talked to the dog nonstop, a habit from her grandmother who believed animals understood every word. You're going to be fine, big guy. Just a little walk. Nice night for it, right? Stars are out. My grandma used to say when the stars are out, somebody up there is keeping watch. So we've got backup tonight. How about that? The road was empty, just her footsteps, the distant hum of highway traffic a mile north, and the dog's wet, labored breathing against her neck. Every 100 yards felt like a mile. Every shadow at the tree line made her heart jump. But she kept talking, kept walking, kept her arms locked tight around the dog's body. Mile 2, her arms started shaking, not trembling, shaking, a deep, muscular vibration that she couldn't control. The dog's blood had soaked completely through her tank top now, warm and sticky against her skin. Her lower back felt like someone had driven a railroad spike into her spine. She shifted his weight higher onto her shoulders, felt something pop in her neck, and kept going. Mile 3, her body quit. Not gradually, all at once. Her legs buckled and she sat down hard on the curb, the dog still cradled in her lap. She pressed the bandage tighter against his ribs. The shirt was completely saturated now, heavy, dark, warm. The bleeding had slowed to a seep, but she could feel his breathing getting shallower. His heartbeat against her chest was fading from a drum to a whisper. "No," she said out loud. "No, you don't get to do that." She checked his eyes, still open, still watching her. Then the dog licked her hand. Just once, barely a brush of his tongue across her knuckles. So weak she almost didn't feel it. But she did feel it, and it shattered something inside her, because she knew what that was. She'd seen it before, with Grandma Ruth's old hound Bo the night he died. That one last lick, that one last gesture, an animal's way of saying thank you and goodbye at the same time. "Don't you dare," Clara whispered, her voice breaking for the first time. "Don't you say goodbye to me. We're not done. You hear me? We are not done." She pressed her forehead against the dog's skull, felt the heat of his body against her face, smelled blood and mud and wet fur, felt his chest rise, fall, rise again, still breathing, still here. Clara took 3 deep breaths, felt every ounce of exhaustion in her body, the aching feet, the screaming back, the arms that had gone past shaking into a kind of dead numbness. Then she stood up, lifted him again, and kept walking. Mile 4, her shoes gave out. The sole of her left sneaker separated from the upper with a wet ripping sound, flapping with every step. within 50 yards. Her bare foot was on the pavement. Rocks bit into her heel. Something sharp, glass maybe, sliced across the ball of her foot. She felt the sting, felt the warmth of her own blood now mixing with the dog's. She didn't stop. Mile 5, a car finally passed. Clara tried to flag it down, stepping into the road with the bleeding dog in her arms, her face streaked with tears and grime, her tank top soaked red. The driver took one look, a blood-covered woman on a dark road, carrying what looked like a dead animal, and accelerated away. The taillights shrank to red pinpricks and vanished around a curve. Clara laughed, a single sharp bark of laughter that had no joy in it, because if she didn't laugh, she was going to lie down in the road and never get up. Mile 6. The blue glow of the Birchwood Animal Emergency sign appeared through the trees like a lighthouse. Clara's legs were shaking so violently she was walking in a zigzag pattern. Sweat poured down her face despite the cool night air. The dog's breathing had slowed to one rattling inhale every few seconds. His body had gone still against her chest. Not dead, but close. So close. She pushed through the clinic door and nearly collapsed on the tile floor. "Please," she gasped. "He's dying. Please help him." The vet tech behind the counter jumped up so fast she knocked over her coffee. Two assistants rushed from the back with a stretcher. They took the dog from Clara's arms, and the sudden absence of his weight was so disorienting that she stumbled backward and fell into a plastic chair. "What happened?" the tech asked. Found him in a ditch off Route 14. He's been bleeding. I don't know how long. I walked him here." "You walked? From where?" "The industrial park, past the warehouse district." The tech stared at her. "That's over 6 miles." Clara nodded. She didn't have the energy to do anything else. They rushed the Rottweiler, Caesar, though Clara didn't know his name, into surgery. Dr. Amara, the emergency vet, worked on him for over an hour. 17 stitches across the rib wound. The leg was severely bruised but not broken. Significant blood loss, but not fatal. If Clara had found him 30 minutes later, even 20, the story would have ended in that ditch. While they worked, Clara sat in the waiting room, barefoot, one foot still bleeding, blood soaked from the chest down, exhausted beyond anything she'd ever felt, when the receptionist brought her water, a blanket, and a package of crackers from the break room. Clara drank the water, wrapped herself in the blanket, and fell asleep in the chair within 60 seconds. She didn't dream. She was too tired to dream. And she had no idea that she just saved the only thing on earth that connected Dominic Valenti to his dead mother. The call came at 4 in the morning. Dominic's men had been searching for 6 hours. 40 men, 12 vehicles, every security camera they could access, every contact in 3 zip codes. Paulie was running on terror, and Red Bull, knowing that his future, maybe his life, depended on finding that dog. Then Birchwood Animal Emergency called the number registered to Caesar's microchip. Dominic picked up on the first ring. "Mr. Valenti, this is Dr. Amara at Birchwood Animal Emergency. We have your dog. He was brought in with significant lacerations and blood loss, but he's stable now and resting comfortably. He's going to be fine." Dominic sat down, slowly, like a man whose legs had just remembered how to stop working. "Who brought him in?" His voice was hoarse. "A woman. She found him on the roadside and carried him here on foot." "How far?" "She said about 6 miles. She was barefoot when she arrived, covered in his blood. She used her own clothing to bandage the wound. Honestly, Mr. Valenti, without her, Caesar wouldn't have survived the night." Dominic said nothing for a long time. Dr. Amara thought the call had dropped. "Is she still there?" he finally asked. She's asleep in our waiting room. I'm coming. 20 minutes. Nobody wakes her. Nobody speaks to her. I want to see her myself. When three black SUVs pulled up to a suburban veterinary clinic at 4:30 in the morning, the overnight staff didn't know what to make of it. Six men in dark suits filed out and took positions at the entrance like it was a military operation. Then Dominic Valenti stepped out of the middle vehicle, and the energy in the building shifted. He went to Caesar first. The dog was on a padded recovery bed, IV line in his front leg, ribs wrapped in clean white bandages. His eyes were closed. But when Dominic knelt beside him and placed a hand on his neck, Caesar's tail thumped once. Weak, slow, but unmistakable. Then his eyes opened, and when he saw Dominic, he let out a whine so soft it was almost inaudible. Not pain, recognition, relief. The sound a child makes when a parent finally walks through the door after a long time away. Dominic pressed his forehead against the dog's skull. His hand rested on Caesar's chest, feeling the heartbeat, steady now, strong, beneath the bandages. This dog was the last gift his mother ever gave him, the last living thread connecting him to the only person who'd ever loved him, without conditions, without fear, without wanting something in return. "I'm here, boy," he whispered. "I'm here." He stayed like that for 2 full minutes. Sal and the vet tech stood by the door, saying nothing. They'd never seen their boss like this. They'd never seen him be gentle. Then Dominic stood, composed his face, and walked to the waiting room. Clara was curled in a plastic chair, the clinic's thin blanket pulled around her shoulders. Her feet were bare, one wrapped in a gauze bandage the receptionist had applied, the other bruised and dirty. Dried blood, Caesar's blood, covered her tank top and jeans in dark, stiff patches. Her hands, even in sleep, were still curled into fists, like they were still carrying something heavy. Dominic studied her. He noticed the calluses on her palms, the shadows under her eyes that spoke of months, maybe years, of insufficient sleep. The way her clothes were clean but old, mended in places, thin at the seams. This wasn't a woman who had anything to spare, and she'd given everything she had to save a stranger's dog. He turned to Sal. "I want to know everything about her by morning. Name, address, employment, financial situation, everything. And Sal, be gentle about it. Don't frighten her." Clara woke at 6 a.m., stiff and disoriented with a crick in her neck and dried blood flaking off her arms. The receptionist told her the dog was in stable condition. The owner had been notified and had picked him up overnight. No name, no message, no thank you. Clara shrugged. She hadn't done it for a reward. She walked the 3 miles home on cut feet, arriving just as morning light spilled across Greenfield Road. The eviction notice was still taped to her door. The paper had curled at the edges from humidity, but the words were as sharp as ever. Thursday. Today. Clara sat on her bed, a mattress on a metal frame, the only furniture she hadn't sold, and stared at the wall. She did the math one more time, hoping the numbers might somehow be different today. They weren't. $47 against $3,200. Would even if she worked every hour left before 5 p.m., she wouldn't earn enough to buy a single day's reprieve. She thought about her grandmother's house in Georgia, the peeling paint and the creaky porch and the garden full of tomatoes and sunflowers, the way it smelled like biscuits and lavender, the way it felt to be somewhere that was yours, really yours, where no one could tell you to leave. That house was gone now, sold to pay medical bills after Grandma Ruth died. Clara didn't cry. She trained herself out of crying months ago. Tears didn't pay rent. She started packing. At 9:15, a black SUV turned onto Greenfield Road. then a second, then a third. They parked in a line directly in front of Clara's building, engines idling, windows tinted so dark you couldn't tell if anyone was inside. Gerald Meeks was already there, and he'd arrived early, 8:45, because Gerald Meeks liked to enjoy his evictions. He was leaning against his Lexus with a Starbucks cup in one hand and a clipboard in the other, chatting with the sheriff's deputy who'd been assigned to supervise the removal. Meeks was 53 years old, owned 14 rental properties across the city, and hadn't done an honest day's physical labor since college. He made his money by buying buildings in struggling neighborhoods, doing the absolute minimum in maintenance, and squeezing tenants who had no options. He was particularly good at evictions. He'd done dozens. He knew the script by heart, the paperwork, the timeline, the precise moment when the deputy would ask the tenant to step aside so the locks could be changed. He knew the look on people's faces when it finally hit them. The dawning understanding that this was real, that their things would be on the curb within the hour, that nobody was coming to save them. That look was Gerald Meeks's favorite part. "Shouldn't take long," he told the deputy, checking his watch. "She's got nothing. One room of junk. My guys can have it cleared and the unit relisted by Monday. I've already got 3 applications lined up, raising the rent $200 a month." He sipped his coffee and smiled. That's when the SUVs arrived. Meeks stopped mid-sip. The deputy put a hand on his belt and straightened up. 6 men in dark suits stepped out of the vehicles and positioned themselves on the sidewalk like they owned it. Their suits were tailored. Their shoes were polished. Their eyes were flat and watchful and utterly calm. Then the rear door of the middle SUV opened. Dominic Valenti stepped out in a charcoal suit, no tie, with an expression that carried more authority than a badge ever could. He looked at the building first, the peeling paint, the crooked fire escape, the nail salon with its flickering sign. Then his eyes found Gerald Meeks. He walked toward him the way a man walks toward something he intends to dismantle. "Gerald Meeks?" Dominic said. Meeks puffed up. "That's right. And who the hell are—" "You're evicting a woman today. Clara Booker, Unit 2B. Meeks glanced at the deputy, then back at Dominic. "Yeah, I am. She's 4 months behind. Court orders signed. It's done. I don't know who you are, but this is a legal proceeding, and how much does she owe?" $3,200, plus late fees, legal costs, cleaning deposit forfeiture. When I call it $4,000. Dominic reached into his jacket. Meeks flinched hard enough that the deputy's hand moved to his holster. But Dominic pulled out a white envelope. Thick, heavy. He held it out. $20,000, Dominic said. That covers her debt, 12 months of rent in advance, and a generous tip for your trouble. Meeks stared at the envelope, then at Dominic, then at the 6 men standing silently behind him. His mouth opened and closed twice. Who are you? What is this? Why would you— Take the envelope, Gerald." Something in Dominic's voice made the question irrelevant. Meeks took the envelope. He opened it. His eyes went wide as he counted. Crisp hundreds, bundled neatly. More cash than he'd ever held at one time. "We're done here," Dominic said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Meeks breathed. "Yeah. She can stay. No problem." "Good." Dominic took one step closer. Close enough that Meeks could smell his cologne. Close enough that the temperature seemed to drop. "One more thing. Fix her ceiling. Fix her radiator. Both have been broken since before winter, which means you've been collecting rent on a unit that violates housing code. That stops today. And Gerald, if I ever hear that you've raised her rent, threatened her, or made her life difficult in any way, I won't come back with an envelope. I'll come back with a conversation you won't enjoy. Are we clear?" Meeks nodded so fast his glasses slipped down his nose. "Say it. We're clear, crystal clear. Yes, sir. The deputy had already backed away to his cruiser. Meeks practically sprinted to his Lexus and peeled out so fast he left rubber on the pavement. Dominic watched him go. Then he turned to look up at the second-floor window, where a shadow had been watching the entire scene. The door above the nail salon opened, and Clara Booker stepped out onto the stairs. She was wearing the same jeans from last night, washed but faintly stained. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were red from a night of not sleeping. She held a half-packed cardboard box in her arms. She stopped when she saw the SUVs, the suited men, and the man at the center of it all, looking up at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Can I help you?" she said carefully. "You carried my dog 6 miles last night." Clara blinked, set the box down slowly. "The Rottweiler. That's your dog?" "His name is Caesar. He's alive because of you. The vet said another 20 minutes and he wouldn't have made it." Clara leaned against the railing. "Is he okay?" "Resting at home. Already tried to steal food off the counter this morning, so I'd say the prognosis is good." A smile crossed Clara's face. Small, tired, but real. "Good. He's a brave dog. Didn't snap at me once, even when I was tying the bandage." "That's a good boy." Dominic nodded. Then his voice changed, softer, but serious. "Your landlord isn't evicting you. Your rent is covered for the next 12 months. The repairs you need will be finished by tonight." Clara's smile disappeared. She stared at him. The box sat forgotten at her feet. "No," she said. Dominic raised an eyebrow. That wasn't the response he'd expected. "I didn't help that dog so someone would pay my rent. I did it because he was hurt and he needed help. That's it. I don't want to owe anyone. I've been on my own my whole life. I don't take handouts." "It's not a handout." "Then what is it?" Dominic looked at her. This woman who'd been hours away from losing everything she had, who was standing on a crumbling staircase holding a cardboard box, and whose first instinct when a stranger tried to help her was to say no. "It's a debt," he said. "Mine, not yours. You saved something irreplaceable to me, something connected to someone I lost a long time ago. This isn't charity, Clara. This is me settling what I owe. And I always settle what I owe." Clara studied his face for a long time. She was looking for the angle, the catch, the hidden cost, the strings that always came attached to generosity from powerful men. She didn't find any. "Who are you?" she whispered. "My name is Dominic, and I'm someone who spent a very long time believing that people only do things for what they can get in return. Last night, you proved me wrong. That's worth more than money." But Dominic didn't stop there. And that's where the story turns into something nobody expected. Over the next 2 weeks, Clara's world transformed. A real construction crew showed up and fixed every broken thing in her apartment: ceiling, radiator, windows, plumbing. Not patches, real repairs, done right, by men who showed up on time and cleaned up after themselves. Then came a phone call from a woman named Teresa, operations manager for a company called Valenti Properties. She said they needed a facilities coordinator, someone organized, reliable, detail-oriented. She described the salary and Clara almost dropped the phone. More than both her current jobs combined. Benefits, paid time off, start Monday. Clara hung up, stared at the phone, called back to make sure it was real. It was real. She showed up that Monday in the best clothes she owned. Pressed slacks, a blouse from Goodwill, shoes that didn't have holes. The office was professional. The people were respectful. Nobody looked at her sideways. Nobody mentioned a dog, a bloody walk, or a man in a charcoal suit. They treated her like she'd earned her place, because she had. 3 weeks in, Clara started noticing things. The way people lowered their voices when they said Mr. Valenti. The way certain calls made entire rooms go silent. The heavy men who occasionally appeared in the building lobby without explanation and disappeared just as quietly. She wasn't naive. She'd grown up around power and its shadows. She knew what Dominic Valenti was. And then someone tried to use that knowledge against her. It was a Thursday afternoon. Clara was in the break room when Marcus Webb, one of the senior property managers, cornered her by the coffee machine. Marcus had been at Valenti Properties for 8 years. He resented Clara's rapid rise, and he'd done his homework. "Must be nice," Marcus said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, coming in off the street and jumping straight to coordinator. "Most of us worked years for that title, but I guess it helps when the boss owes you a personal favor, right?" Clara set her coffee down. "I was hired for my qualifications." "Sure you were," Marcus smirked. "Word of advice, sweetheart, people who get fast-tracked by Dominic Valenti tend to learn the hard way that nothing from that man comes free. Enjoy it while it lasts." He walked away, leaving Clara standing alone with a cold knot in her stomach. That night she almost quit. She sat at her kitchen table, the new one in her newly repaired apartment, and wrote a resignation letter. 3 drafts, each one angrier than the last. Then she tore them all up. Because Clara Booker had never run from anything in her life, not from poverty, not from exhaustion, not from a 6-mile walk with a dying dog, and she wasn't going to run from Marcus Webb's insecurity. She went to work the next morning, did her job, did it well. And when Marcus made another snide comment in a staff meeting, she looked him dead in the eye and said, "Can I carry a 110-pound dog 6 miles barefoot in the dark? Do you really think a man with a coffee mug and a grudge scares me?" The room went quiet. Marcus never spoke to her that way again. 2 months later, Dominic invited Clara to the compound for dinner. Sal called it casual. Clara called it terrifying. She'd never been behind those iron gates before. But then she walked through the front door and heard the sound of heavy paws scrambling on hardwood. Caesar came barreling down the hallway, 110 pounds of pure excitement, tail wagging so hard his entire back end swayed. He hit Clara at full speed and nearly knocked her over, pressing his massive head into her stomach, whining and wiggling like a puppy. The scar on his ribs had healed into a clean white line, a permanent mark, a memory written in skin. Clara dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his warm fur. "Hey, big guy," she whispered. "There you are. I've been wondering about you." Caesar licked her face. Once, twice, 3 times. Then he settled against her with a heavy sigh, his body pressed against hers like he was afraid she'd leave. Dominic stood in the hallway, watching. His expression was unreadable to anyone else. But Sal, who'd been with him for 22 years, saw something he'd never seen on his boss's face before. Peace. Dinner was simple. Pasta made from Angela Valenti's recipe, the one Dominic's mother used to make every Sunday. He told Clara that, and she noticed the way his voice changed when he said his mother's name. Softer, younger, like he was 14 again, sitting at a kitchen table that no longer existed. They talked for 3 hours, about Clara's grandmother and her rescued animals, about Dominic's mother and the puppy with the red bow, about loneliness, the real kind, the kind that doesn't go away when you fill a room with people, because none of those people actually know you. "You want to know why I really came that morning?" Dominic said, turning his wine glass slowly between his fingers. "It wasn't just the dog." Clara waited. "Sal pulled your file. 2 jobs, no car, no family, $47 in the bank, about to be thrown out onto the street." He paused. And in the middle of the worst night of your life, you found a bleeding animal in a ditch and you didn't walk past. You didn't call someone else. You didn't say it wasn't your problem. You picked him up and you carried him 6 miles in the dark, barefoot, with your own blood mixing with his, for a dog you'd never met, for an owner you'd never know. He set the glass down. I have spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who do things because they want something. Every handshake has a price tag. Every smile has an invoice behind it. That's the world I built. That's the world I understand. He looked at her. And then you, a woman with absolutely nothing left to give, gave everything. For no reason except that it was right. Clara looked down at Caesar, who had fallen asleep across both their feet under the table, his enormous body serving as a warm, furry bridge between them. He was hurt, Clara said quietly. That's all it was. My grandma taught me, you don't walk past something that's hurting. Ever. No matter how tired you are. No matter what you're carrying. You stop, and you help. That's just what you do. Dominic nodded slowly. Your grandmother sounds like she was a remarkable woman. She was the best person I've ever known. Dominic looked at the photograph on the dining room wall. Angela Valenti, smiling, holding a glass of wine at this very table 20 years ago. So was mine. That was 3 years ago. Clara Booker is now the Director of Operations for Valenti Properties. She manages 12 buildings, oversees a team of 30, and earns more in a month than she used to make in a year. She bought a car, a sensible one. She bought a house, small with a big yard. And yes, she got a dog. A rescue, naturally. A 3-legged pit bull named Biscuit who follows Caesar around the compound like a shadow. Every Sunday, Clara drives out for dinner. Caesar waits for her at the gate, rain or shine, her tail already wagging before her car turns the corner. The scar on his ribs has faded to a thin white line, barely visible now, unless you know where to look. Dominic Valenti is still Dominic Valenti. He still commands his empire. He still lives in the gray spaces between law and power. But the people closest to him, the ones who've watched him for decades, will tell you that something fundamental changed in him the morning he stood on a cracked sidewalk on Greenfield Road and met a woman who had nothing, owed nothing, and expected nothing, but gave everything anyway. In his office, on a shelf between a framed photo of his mother and a ledger that tracks debts only he understands, there's a glass case. Inside the case is a folded shirt, blood-stained, torn, faded. Clara's work shirt, the one she used to bandage a dying dog in a ditch at 2 in the morning. His men have asked about it. Visitors have noticed it. Business associates have raised eyebrows. Dominic never explains it. He doesn't have to, because the people who understand already know. And the people who don't understand never will. That shirt represents something that Dominic Valenti, with all his money, all his power, all his influence, all his carefully constructed walls, could never buy, never build, and never force into existence. It represents a woman who didn't walk past, a woman who stopped on the worst night of her life, knelt in the mud, wrapped her shirt around a stranger's dog, and carried him, barefoot, bleeding, exhausted, alone, through 6 miles of darkness. Not for money, not for recognition. Not because anyone was watching or would ever know, but because that's who she is. And because sometimes the thing that changes everything, the thing that cracks open even the hardest, most guarded, most armored heart in the world, isn't power or money or fear. It's a woman on a dark road, holding a dying dog, whispering, "We're not done yet," and meaning it. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if you found that dog on the road? And I'll see you in the next one.